you on mute? Yes, sir.
Oh, I am sorry.
I'm all set.
How to get used to this. All right. Off mute. In the rebirth of CocoaHeads Online. Good. All right, beautiful. Let's get started. Well, thanks everyone for coming tonight. Welcome to CocoaHeads for May 2024. I'd have to start looking. That's where the camera is. All right, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. All right, I'll get started with some short housekeeping. So, hey, I'm Zach, and that's Christian over there. Together we run CocoaHeads. Any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to let us know. And as always, a massive thank you to Blue, our sponsor, sponsoring the whole event. We're here in their offices tonight. They also help pay for the food and all our ancillary costs like the meetup and website and things like that. So we're very grateful to them for helping us make this meetup possible. Speaking of Billu, something new tonight, you might have seen it on your way in. There's a QR code to scan and just to enter your details. Billu have started requiring this for all guests as part of some compliance stuff. So just if you haven't done it on the way in, just on the way out, there's another QR code. If you can please just scan it and just enter. It's just, I think it's a name and that might be name and yeah, time of arrival, yeah. So if you could just remember to do that, that'd be great, please. And we have a code of conduct. It's available in full on the website, but the idea behind it is we want everyone to feel welcome and included at our events. If there's any questions, comments, or concerns related to the code of conduct, feel free to get in touch with myself or Christian tonight, or otherwise you can send us a message on Slack or Meetup or something after the fact if you prefer to contact us that way. We also have a Slack community, and it's governed by a code of conduct, but it's a great place to hang out throughout the month and ask questions or talk to people who might be here tonight as well. There's a few channels worth noting, but I'll particularly call out Indie, which is a new channel. It's at the bottom of the list there for anyone who might be working on their own projects or just want to see what people are talking about who are working on their own projects. It's a bit of fun. Christian created it only a month or two ago. But if you have something to say related to any indie stuff, I encourage you to jump in and post it. That's the QR code to join the Slack, but I'll put it up again a bit later on. Is anyone attending for the first time? Just show of hands. No one. Everyone's been here before. Well done. All right. Well, I think this is the first time that might have ever happened. So we're all seasoned CocoaHeads attendees. If you like what you see here tonight, Melbourne CocoaHeads, they do a very similar thing. Also a great meetup, and they have an excellent live streaming facility, so you can watch it online even if you're from Sydney. So we run on the third Thursday of the month, they run on the second Thursday. So definitely worth checking out their meetup page, and if any of the talks interest you, then you can generally watch it online. All right, is anyone hiring or looking for work and wants to give a quick spiel about the job they're either looking for or the role they're hiring for? Very quiet audience tonight. All right, no one's looking for work. No worries. If something popped them up throughout the month, channel on Slack, feel free to post in there. And it's because the Slack community is more than just the Sydney crew, you might be able to find something like a remote role or something in another part of Australia as well. So that's, well, you know, from someone hiring in another part of Australia, I mean. Quick shout out to conferences. It's a conference season at the moment. We've just had DevWorld, and that feels like about half the room were down in Melbourne last week for DevWorld. And Deep Dish Swift just happened over in Chicago. But the next one to look forward to is, of course, WWDC happening next month. I'm sure I don't need to tell any of you that, but it is happening in between sort of now and our next meetup. And it's mostly online again, which is, I guess, good for us in Australia. But there is a one-day event in Apple Park. I guess tickets for that are closed. So some of you might be attending, but I guess the most of us will be watching online. It should be interesting to see what Apple come out with this year. So that's obviously WWDC is going to play into our next event, which is on the 20th of June. We're still kind of working out the details for a little bit more WWDC themed event, but one of the ideas is a panel discussion, getting kind of people's initial takes, reactions, and thoughts on sort of whatever's announced at WWDC. The plan currently is here on the 20th of June, and it'll be the week after WWDC. But obviously for that panel, we need panelists. So if anyone's interested in kind of sharing their thoughts in a public forum, just be a couple of chairs or a few chairs up here. and kind of round robin style questions and, you know, audience answers and things like that. Feel free to let me know tonight or send me a message on Slack or something like that. And we can kind of put together that panel and make it work before the 20th of June. But obviously that doesn't work if people don't volunteer. So I'd really appreciate anyone who's willing to do that. All right, so I've rambled for long enough. You've just heard me do the housekeeping. We have 2 talks tonight. The first is by Amy. The title of the talk is Been Around the World a couple of or maybe more. And then our second talk will be from Daniel on leveraging managed app config. And then following that, we'll have, so there'll be no break between the talks, but we'll have kind of our break or socializing element at the end of that. And feel free to stick around and chat after the 2 talks. So that's all that I have. Now I'm going to pass over to Amy for her talk. Well, just hold that for you. I don't want to. Is this not the longest HDMI cable you've ever seen? I haven't.
Okay.
It might be.
So, unmuted. Hopefully everything is coming through. Need to get laptops set up. Okay. Let's see how this goes. Yep. Cool. Yay! It actually even did the right way around for everything, which is good. I've got my presenter notes and we have the slides up there for you. Now, being a new setup, I've got no idea which area the camera's going to be in for the YouTube stream, so
I'll catch
you. there is a good chance that the camera might overlap with some slides. So with all that done, it is good to be back in Sydney. I was up at 3 AM this morning on a 6:15 flight up from Melbourne. It is all fun for me. I love it. It's why I actually work for Qantas, which kind of makes sense. This is not a Qantas talk though. This is me having fun and doing stuff with SwiftUI and MapKit. Okay. First thing I want to talk about today is result builders. So one of the things you would have noticed with a lot of Apple's UI frameworks is they're making really heavy use of result builders. So if you're using something like Swift Charts, a lot of that is result builders. If you're using the new MapKit, SwiftUI stuff, sorry, again, that is all result builders. Even a view builder itself is a result builder. So they are parts of the Swift language that allow you to have a really nice DSL. I would say that they end up being fairly expressive, they're descriptive, they're declarative, they are prolific in SwiftUI, and things like regex uses result builders a lot, charts uses result builders, and also maps. One of the things I'd love to see use result builders is health, so HealthKit. I've been playing around with it a little bit in my spare time. Nothing is quite sat for me as far as something that works really well, but we'll see how it goes. When you're looking at drawing a map, here is a bit of a practical example. What we have here is the map there, which takes a result builder in there. You've got your map polyline to begin with, and then a few annotations there. So it really is a great way of combining everything into one concise statement that allows you to draw a map. And it looks something like what you see on the screen there as well. It's obviously cropped a little bit and it's just the polyline you see, but we'll see examples coming up of the different annotations as well. In this particular example, it's just drawing a circle in there. And you can really see that for a lot of it, it's just result builders or view builders all the way down, which is kind of fun. Okay, now let's talk about maps itself. The map type is actually really super extensive, and each time I look at Apple's documentation, I find just all of these weird and wonderful things I can do in order to display map data to users, and I go, oh, how can I actually use that in my app? So what I'm wanting to talk about now is just all of these different features of maps, which is user location, the different styles of the maps, the camera position, then looking at different bits of map content such as annotations, polyline, polygons, and also map controls. The easiest thing to do with a map is to show the user's location, and there are a couple of different ways to do it. Here are two examples. The one at the top is for if you've already got the user's location stored somewhere else, say in a view model. You can then draw whatever marker you want onto the screen and have it displayed to the user. In the case of a cycling app I'm working on, it will just show a sort of a bubble with the particular SF symbol in there, and that seems to work really well. The other option is to have the map itself display that typical blue dot there with the map control. So you provide a button as the map control, and that will allow you to tap it and turn on the user's location. You do need to make sure that stuff like your location privacy and all that is set, because otherwise it just silently fails and you won't know what's going on. Map styles. So the tiles, which are the bits of map data that show the user behind like your lines and any other content, is what gets referred to as map styles. So you have imagery, which is what's shown there, and that is your sort of satellite pictures that get shown. You also have standard, which is more this style. Sorry. And you have hybrid as well, which is a combination of the two. So think you've got your image there, and then you're overlaying it with a bit of emphasis on the streets and other places that are there. Now, as well as showing something like the user's data and location, having it sort of track that as you use the app is really good. And this is where camera position comes in. So you can say to the map, I want to follow the user's location, and you do that by providing a camera position. In this case, it is user location, which is fairly well named, and you just go, yep, let's follow, let's keep it so that this little blue dot is roughly going to be in the center as the person moves around. In order to do that, you provide a binding to the state variable or the publisher if you're using, say, a view model, and that gets passed in as part of the initializer in the map. There are a lot of different other options in there. You can provide like a region or something like that, and because it's a binding, if the user interacts with the map, you then get all of that information back into that binding, so you can do stuff like provide a call out or restrict the region or something like that in order to give the user a bit more feedback as to what they're doing. Oh, yes, there is a video here I forgot to play it. Oh well, sorry. Annotations. So as I was saying at the start, the annotations are these callouts. Here it's just showing the start and the end of a particular ride I did, and being completely unoriginal, I've just done them as circles on the map. But because it's a view that gets shown, you can then provide whatever data you want there, and it will show it on the map. Polylines is where it starts to get fun, because you can just draw these lines onto the map. Doing so requires you to provide a series of CL location coordinates, which is latitude and longitude. Sorry, lots of talking today, so this is, well, it's near the end for a long day, including being in the office, up at all hours, you know. So here we just provide a series of location coordinates, and it will draw it onto. If we were to go back a couple of years before, where you had SwiftUI, but you didn't have all of these nice result builder like APIs to use, then doing a line like this would require a use of a Z stack or a Z stack, in which you draw the map, and then you have to calculate the line based on the coordinates, but also the size of the map itself. And it gets a bit weird and interesting and out of sync, but Apple has done an amazing job here, and everything lines up perfectly. The next fun thing is a polygon. So if you've got some data that shows the region of a particular country, you can then grab all of these different polygons and do an overlay to the map itself. So you can sort of go, here's a region to investigate or look at or something. And again, it is pretty fun to do. The controls is for if you like doing interactivity or navigation and stuff like that. So you can put on there, say, a compass. You can do like a 3D tilt in there, and you can also show the user's location. And all of this allows a lot of really nice control around how a map gets presented, but also what interactions the user is doing. One of the other things I've been looking at recently but haven't quite gotten around to is something called a map reader. A map reader is similar to a scroll view reader or a geometry reader, in that it will allow you to take the data from the map as far as what gets shown and its sort of region, its bounds and stuff like that, and then allow you to do other things based on those updates. So that could be really cool if like you wanted to zoom in on an area and then go, okay, what are all my annotation points or my lines and stuff like that, all of the location coordinates in there. And yeah, it just allows us a really interesting analysis of the data to be done. Another thing I want to talk about is this idea creation. You have definition to a format. The most commonly used format that I know of is GeoJSON, which is shoving all of this data into a JSON blob and using that to communicate, say, here's a region, or here's a route, or here are interesting things to do along the way and stuff like that. GeoJSON is defined by an RFC, which is 7946. If you want to read it, that is a good option. And then Apple provides what is called an MK GeoJSON decoder that will allow you to take your JSON file and parse it using the same approach or a similar approach to decoding other JSON. But that gets fairly tricky in that this is the data that you are actually dealing with, where you're defining a whole heap of features, and then for each feature it has some properties. Those properties are free-form and can be anything from like a country name through to route would be polylines, a overlay or a region would be a polygon. You can have multi-polygons, and it just gets a lot. So when you get to the decoding, you have to do stuff like this. This is just a lot of playing around with it code, so maybe not the best. What we have here is to do with getting the regions for a particular set of countries. So we need to grab the data from that. Then we want to decode it using a GeoJSON decoder, which gives us all of our objects. From those objects, we want to make sure that everything is a feature, which is MK GeoJSON feature. We then want to filter those. We do that. We then get the geometry from it. For this, we know that it is a MK multi-polygon, so many polygons ranging from nothing to whatever they want. And we do that because countries tend to be unique-ish, debatable. We're just cheating and grabbing the first one. And that has been a bit of a whirlwind tour of maps. A lot of the new stuff that was announced last year at DubDub. Unfortunately, no questions today, so we'll hand back to Zach just quickly, and then Daniel will be up for his talk.
Yeah, I'm not muted. Let me know. Yeah? Oh, well, it's relative. Hi. My name is Daniel. This is my fourth CocoaHeads, so I think that's that. So I'm new in the dev space. I work for a company called Jamf. Some of you might have heard of them, so I don't know. They're in the MDM space. I'm one of their consulting engineers, so jack of all trades, master of a couple. I'm going to chat today about managed app config. So I'm going to first sort of give you a little story of my first CocoaHeads meeting, where I turned up early and I met Zach. I introduced myself because I also run a Sydney Mac admins meetup, and I kind of wanted to steal some of his ideas. And so I chatted to him about my experience with apps and stuff like that. I said, oh yeah, most of the apps I deal with are around app config. And he looked at me with a bit of a blank stare. So I'm just going to take a poll in the room here. Who has heard of app config or managed app config?
Do we want to admit to it?
You can admit to it. Just hearing about it is a different thing. But used it and stuff like that. So, but Zach at that point had never heard of it. And I was like, okay, that's a problem from what I've seen. Because I have a lot of customers that will say, we want this app, I'm going to push it out. How do we put this in? It's like, you need to talk to the developer. And we do app config. So give you a little history on it. It's not a new thing, especially for iOS. It came out in 2013, iOS 7. Yeah, it's very cutting edge. Yeah. And then so further OS support came through, tvOS and then macOS. I haven't really seen it used with macOS because config profiles are a thing. Writing into plist has been around since, yeah, older than I'd like to remember. We need to sort of also just sort of like say the app needs to be written to support app config. It's not something that you can just wake up one day and say, I'm going to write out this file to an app and it works. It is available. Apple have this thing as well called BYOD. So using a managed Apple ID to enroll a device, that's what they're calling BYOD device type thing. It is available and works on those as well as on an enterprise. So it kind of covers a lot of different bases on that. I did this sort of talk, I should say, at Xworld last week. So I had to do a gratuitous anvil drop. When I was doing a bit of a talk last week, it was at Xworld, so it was more an admin focus than a focus. But this blog post by Marco Eidinger, I really hope I'm saying that right or close enough to, and I apologize if not. That's the link for it. That is the QR code for it as well. People can share on that there. Really good sort of overview of how it's used and how can stuff like that there. So that was a really useful resource for me. If anyone wants it again, by all means, it's very quick. He has a sample of Xcode up there, how I use it and stuff as well. I looked at it, I read it, I knew some of it, but then I wanted to adapt it, and we'll go through that as well. For those who aren't familiar with it, it's one preference. It's one dictionary, one preference file inside the app called, it lives within the user defaults, com.apple.configuration.managed. So you could use something like this as an example, the read it and report any of that there. That's what Marco had in his blog, is just, I want to display what's being sent to me, so I'm just going to parse through and pipe it out. Then one thing I sort of found with like devs is like, well, I need an MDM to do this. I don't have an MDM. I'm a dev. The IT people don't let me access into that after that one time, which I'm not allowed to talk about. There is ways that we can replicate what we're sending in user default using the XC run, and I will show that as well, because I said I like live stuff. The MDM working with, if you have a customer or something like that, does need to do some stuff as well. It's not all on the dev. The MDM needs to support at least the first command, which is when it's installing the app, install the configuration at the same time. Most MDMs that I've experienced also support the second command, which is updating changes. The app can be aware of those when you relaunch it, so you can then post a new version of the config without having to reinstall the app.
Someone's got stuck in it.
Me?
Settings, command, settings.
Yeah, I try not to look at it too quickly. Apple and naming conventions is always a, it's almost, what's a word that sort of starts in, a sentence that reads backwards and forwards and it's the same?
That's a word.
It's a, yeah, but that kind of like format. It kind of reminds that almost, but anyway. this is when I was like chatting to a few people at Dev World, and I was like explaining what my talk was about, and I got this kind of response. Like, why? Like, you're adding more code debt to me. Go away. But this is where I've sort of seen it in a lot of apps, is these are the three sort of big ones that I've seen it with through. MDM has access to some information that an app doesn't. Because MDM's allowed to collect information about the device that an app is just not allowed to do. We can see serial number, we can see UDID, we can see IMEI. It might also be tied into an identity. So we can see a username or a full name, departments, all these sorts of bits and pieces that are just not available to us as devs. You might also then just want to confine how an app is behaving if it's in a more locked down state. Or you just want to brand it. Who doesn't like branding? Change the color, change the logo, away you go. You still change the app icon because that's just not going to be possible unless you pre-bake every possible app icon possible into the assets. But for some apps that I have done where they had different varieties, like I might have something for Pride or some other thing like that, biometrics, if you don't have biometrics turned on, it just defaults to passcode, but it still requires another point of input for security. Controlling how apps that are accounts are allowed to access it. And again, as a MDM, we're allowed to see some information that a regular dev won't. We can pre-fill the email address, which makes a better user experience. They struggle enough to know their own name, let alone their password. So yeah, that's me rambled. Let's see if we can break something. Is this resolution okay, or do I need to make this bigger? Make it bigger? Optimize for the air. How about that? How's that?
A little bit better.
A little bit better?
No, yeah.
Or we go full larger text. Change resolution. See, we're breaking stuff already.
We are old.
So if we go this, is found my app on my iPad. It has, or it did, new movie recording. We're going to see my face again. Come on. Come on. Oh, spinning wheel. Cool. All right, let's quit that and circle back to it. Let's chat about the dev stuff. So we have our traditional hello world. This is all really realized. But you know, you stand to open that. So I basically just made a version of the hello world app, but I've added an app configs. So we don't need to worry about the hello world. Not touching anything in here because this is a very straightforward app. Let's bring this down. So I've added a Z-stack so that I can put like a background color for the thing there. I'm then just saying, okay, I want to do a background color, changing what our default SF symbol is. So instead of the globe, that's something I can read in. Same for what the foreground color is. And then also just sort of defining instead of hello world, hello something else. So if I run this, how's simulator going to run? In the background, of course. Okay, so how we can run this when we're devs and we don't have access to an MDM. So when I said we've got xrun simutil, so here's an example where with the spawn, can we make that bigger? Yeah? I'll make it bigger anyway. So we're spawning to the booted, we're writing out to this preference file, and we're then defining the dict. App config is in a app likes XML, it's in a dictionary type thing. You define what your key, your value, key, value. So if I run this and go back to simulator, it did nothing because this is not detecting for live. We have to just quit and reopen the app. How do I make this slightly smaller? Come on. Huh?
Command 1.
Command 1. Thank you very much. It's still not small enough. I need to get to the Command 0. That will make it very small. I'm just going to change this slightly just so I can get to this little bar. So if I quit it and reopen, now I've got that there. So it said reading it in there. That's for ant. We use it for the bug symbol a lot. If I try that to say tray, oh. Again, quit and reopen. And when you're done, you want to reset it all. There, you just delete the preference. You don't need to find the specific keys. You can just trash the whole thing. Right? So no MDM involved. That's replicating what MDM would be doing through. Slightly finicky, yes, with having to quit, reopen the app, but it does give you the chance of not having to deal with the MDM stuff. If we have a look at the actual code of what that's doing there, so I've got my app config. I'm defining just presets. So if there's no app config, I need to sort of display something, right? That's just more around a user experience. There is an initializer. So this is something I've written for, and I say we because I've got a friend of mine who helped me with this. To sort of be aware of live updates, you can actually do a call for the notifications under user defaults. Now, unfortunately, that's a noisy thing because it's not just in the com.apple.management config, it's anything in user default. So if someone changes something there, it will refresh it. We've found with some apps that I've helped write that that's a fine trade-off to get live updates occurring without the user having to quit and reopen the app. But depends on the app, depends on the scenario, depends on how much you're changing. Then we're just doing our stuff. Nope. Reading our file. If it's nothing there, there's no app config present. I'm just printing that to the console so we can see that there. And then I'm cycling through for each dictionary that I've defined, or each key, looking for the values and setting them through. Now, let's have a look at how it will run if we do it in MDM. Let's inceptionize this. Come on. Yeah, there we go. Come on. Cool. So, okay, very secure password that I keep forgetting. And let's go to devices, apps, and let's just move this across the side so you can see that I'm not cheating. There's no movie magic happening here. So there's my app. It's, again, just internal signed. I'm not even test flighting it. So scope it out to my device. Come on. And then I've got my app configuration. So if I just save this now, and it should take a second to download, there it goes. So no app config set. So as if they download it from the App Store, whatever it is, I tap it, open, hello world. Fairly straightforward. If I go to my example of app config, make sure this is up here. So all the different keys that I have into that there. We can see though, because as an MDM, I'm allowed to pass in some variables. So like $username, UDID, change this, all that. So if I hit save on this here now, yeah, that does happen for the first time because it's signed and reinstalls. But that kind of stuff will happen there now. So I've got debug as a bool. So I'm just going to put that as false. And yeah, I had problems signing this and it doesn't like on this. Ideally, what's meant to happen is it just updates live. It's not on that there. But this is what happens when we do live stuff. But yeah, that's kind of using app config in the wild and why I'd love to see more apps supporting it. But that's very much on the devs knowing about it for one. And I don't blame devs for not knowing about it because again, 2013, they started this. A lot of names that you might see from there, they're mainly MDMs. That was like, okay, MDMs can benefit from this. We'll get together and we'll define the schema. There's going to be one rule set for everybody to. That didn't work. A lot of these are competitors of each other. They don't really talk. And so here's where it died. You go to your dev center. And there is an example for Android as well, but I'm not going to talk about that. It's like, oh, your examples. Yep, absolutely. You go for sample code available on Apple. Latest revision. So this is the problem that's, oh, very much so. And that's where we're trying to sort of drive more awareness. And I used to think before I started diving into this that it was really difficult to actually include when I found out it was just one file you need to read. There's obviously complexities with that. You need to know what you're reading. You need to know how you're handling it. Are you replacing things? Is it even going to benefit the apps that are being written? But this was just more of a public service. And as I said, in my capacity as being from an MDM vendor, I've had plenty of customers say, we've got this app that we're pushing out to 1,000 students. We can't trust them to type in a URL correctly. Can you just pre-fill in the URL? We can't. Reach out to the developer. That kind of scenario happens a lot. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening to me ramble. Yeah. I should say, are there questions? I don't want questions, but if there are questions, I'm not going to say no. Yes.
Because it's basically as user default, is there a risk that you can break it by pushing a bad config?
That kind of depends on how you're doing your error handling. So if I did an app config that didn't exist, so I did that here, and let's make sure that this is open. Save. No, that's a simulator. QuickTime. Like quit, reopen. Doesn't affect the end user.
But if you like make guess a syntax error in your app config.
Well, that's a key that doesn't exist.
But would the parser get it there?
Yes.
Okay.
It would ignore it if you were like saying to ignore it. It's very difficult if you're going to break it. The way that I've broken it was we tried to put too many app configs down. But that's where we were trying to build an entire SwiftUI app. The entire interface was driven by app config. Don't do that. Yeah, things you learn, but yeah. I mean, when it was like something like 180 like keys, it's an absolute nightmare. And then a lot of MDMs don't even support that many. Most handle probably around 20, but yeah, you can't really break it too much.
Do you have a potential like hole in not necessarily privacy because you're just exposing tokens, but anyone can read this, so third-party library could notionally be just reading as user defaults and dumping it somewhere.
Dumping it where though? I mean,
I don't know. Piping it to analytics or something.
Sure. So yeah, you do have to be aware of like what you're reading in and nothing that's potentially compromising. As I said, there's a huge amount of apps that are very sensitive. Outlook is a prime example. They've got a lot of sensitive information going on there. Someone's email is an example, but it lives in there because the trade-off is usability. But yeah, it's not something that I've come across personally. Yes.
As a dev, where do you publish what keys you've used?
Yeah, that's another fun one. Most will have a corresponding sort of admin guide with the app. So Outlook has like, here's a list of all the keys. A lot of them will be related to where you download the app from. They'll have like you're getting it from the App Store, right? But if you're deploying it via some organization, you might know where the publisher's website is and then list out a app supported and here's your key selected values. Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, then you.
Suppose this kind of change, which can change the behavior of the app, right? So do you normally let human to do this, or do you allow APIs to do this? You can build in some kind of pipelines to update this.
update this?
Yeah, update this.
Yeah, so that's going to come down to your MDM of choice. If they have an API that allows you to change this, some do, some don't. Jamf as an example, I can speak to that. You can change this via the API. There's also a specific API endpoint that you can have the app callback and check that can force it to refresh itself. It just has to send back its own refresh ID or refresh code as part of it. Those ones are more specific for how the MDM has written it so that it knows to phone home and do bits. But yes, you can absolutely trigger through. It is worth saying as well, though, once you set app config down on a device, it kind of stays if you wipe it. Like if I go back to here and I select all this and I delete it, it's going to remain because I haven't set any new values. It's not replacing anything, yeah. So that's where you'd have to be aware of like, okay, I need a bool of a true or false to show or hide something like where I've got on the debug. But yeah, But yes, you can, depending on your MDM of choice, triggering for that there, the CI/CD workflows are available. If you're reading in from a value outside of the app config, like $username, and that's read in somewhere else that hasn't changed, or that's changed, but that it doesn't know that this has changed, you might have to poke it to say, hey, refresh as well.
So do you have any limit, like what maximum number of keys can you put?
Well, the maximum I ran into was 180, but I didn't start riding it back from that. Most MDMs I've seen support about 20 to 30. That's probably around your sweet spot in that, yeah. Yes.
I may have missed, but this device was enrolled on MDM.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't want to show you that because that's just boring. But yeah, you can see it's supervised, and if I go VPN device management, it's got an MDM from there. Like, you know more about MDM, I can talk a lot about that, but I figure that's kind of the wrong one.
So just future speculation, given Apple hasn't really looked at this since.
Yeah.
Do you think they're planning to look at it, or
There's more of a movement with the MDM vendors that are still caring about it, that are trying to push. There's a problem is this, no, not that site, but the previous one is run by VMware. They've had a bit of a change recently with the acquisition, just a small one. So I know there's conversations happening more on a US side for having other MDM vendors take ownership of this and then try and update, and let's reignite that story about more spec levels.
So can you specify different key value pairs for like different conditions, similar to file-based remote config? So I see this as a file-based remote config, right? File-based remote config is like key value stores, which you can specify different conditions for this one.
Sure.
Yeah. So you can use this.
I mean, you can do like, it's string or bool for this sort of stuff like that. You could have two different app configs going to two different devices.
So let's say I would like to force upgrade with lower than lower than maybe version 2.0 or something like that. Can we do like this? Like
No, because it's living in the user default space. It doesn't have ability to then call back out to force an update of the app. That would be something the MDM would take over. You could say in the end, like I got in my option here for the app, like this is an in-house app. Wow, that's struggling. Come on. For in-house app, I can install automatically. There's ones on third-party apps. Let me bring up I was going to try Outlook, but that didn't work. But things that come from the App Store, you can say schedule App Store updates. And that's, again, an MDM-driven thing rather than trying to have the app install itself. It's kind of like standing on a chair and shit. You can do it, but you're going to hurt yourself. But yeah, so that's where you would probably take over that kind of thing. So it's more around probably enhancing that user experience or maybe securing it down because it just lives in that user defaults and you're limited to what that space can do.
It seems basically to sync instantly. Are there any sort of scenarios where there will be a delay, or is the assumption always that if you're online, you've got the latest version of the config?
If you're online, you get the latest. So if I bring up my device, if I just do a search, this is it here. So if I look at my management history, as an example, we can see whenever I make a change, that's an MDM command that's being fired off. So you're as fast as APNS, which is pretty damn quick.
Yeah.
The awareness of it changing live comes down to that checking the notifications state, because this command is saying, hey, something changed. The notification is aware of that, but doesn't know to then refresh everything. So in those sort of scenarios, you have to quit and reopen the app. Yes.
APNS, does it use APNS?
Yes, it
Because
does.
APNS can
That's
go
what,
away.
that's what MDM uses, is Apple Push
Go
Notification Service.
away. It can miss messages. There's a maximum throughput. Do too many and it starts throwing things away.
You have to do a lot, though.
It's noted in all the Apple docs is do not rely on this as do not use this as a reliable delivery mechanism.
But yeah, no, the way MDM is handling that, we're doing a lot of commands and it's not being throttled.
Okay. Doesn't match what Apple docs say. Hey,
Apple has some
won't be the first time.
Yeah.
want to use
Also, that one thing I found with this is the MDM channel is sometimes given different priority than, say, a dev channel. there's definitely some aspects on that there. But yeah, that's when I'm running a command, GM command fires off, then it's updated. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, round of applause. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
That's great.
It was something.
No, it was good, good.
How do I do that?
Just, yep, and you're off, you're muted. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Free to leave. Don't forget to sign out on the QR code if you didn't on your way in, please. And hope to see you next month. And if you're interested in being on our panel, please come and speak to Christian or myself, or send us a message throughout the month as well. But thank you, and we'll see you next month.